Energy Transition Now with David Linden.
Hello everyone, you're listening to Energy Transition Now. I'm your host, David Linden, the Head of Energy Transition for the Westwood Global Energy Group. Following on from our last episode with the CCSA, today we continue our focus on the United Kingdom, but through the lens of the energy company ENI or ENI. It is striving for carbon neutrality by 2050, which includes it offering services, products and solutions that are increasingly sustainable, which includes leveraging CCUS technology. I have personally found its role, and some may say leadership even, in the space in the UK fascinating. And so I'm really pleased to have Martin Currie, the Energy Transition Manager for ENI UK, as my guest today. Welcome, Martin, to Energy Transition Now.
Thanks very much, David. Pleased to be with you.
Now, I'm not too sure who has heard of your good self, Martin, or not, but it would always be wise to start off with a few words, maybe from yourself, just introducing you, to our audience.
Sure. So you mentioned my title, Energy Transition Manager. Really, what I've been doing on a day-to-day basis over the last 5 years here in the UK is to develop our CCS business within the UK, and of late to specifically engage with the UK authorities to get us to a finalised point in our project. One of our projects more advanced, we'll go on to talk about that, the HyNet Northwest CCS project. But there's a lot of agreements to be made with the government, and really that's where my focus has been.
Thank you for that. So let's maybe take a step back first of all, just so people understand a little bit more about ENI's CCS business as a whole and how it fits in with ENI as a company. Can you maybe just start off by explaining how does CCS itself fit in with ENI strategy?
Well, it's become a very important part of our decarbonisation strategy. We've got decarbonisation targets that involve all our business lines that are designed to provide economically feasible solutions and utilise innovative technologies with an aim to decarbonise the entire company. And to this end, we're investing in researching, developing and implementing transition technologies. Our approach is really to help solve what the World Energy Council refers to as the energy trilemma, this simultaneous striving to ensure environmental sustainability, supply security of energy, and energy affordability. And our decarbonisation strategy defines specific medium to long-term emissions targets and business objectives. So this process consists of a series of intermediate targets that envisage, firstly, net zero emissions, scope 1 and 2 from the upstream business by 2030, and from all other business lines by 2035. And we're talking about scope 1 and 2 in that respect. And then zero net emissions, including all greenhouse gas scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, both in absolute terms and in terms of intensity by 2050. And we align our plans and investments to our strategy to achieve a fully decarbonised product portfolio. And CCUS is just one of the elements of our transition model. And it also includes, amongst others, energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, advanced biofuels and low carbon fuels. For CCS or CCUS, it's a mature and safe technology from our perspective. And this plays an essential role in the decarbonisation of hard to abate sectors for which there are currently no equally effective and efficient solutions. This is backed up by the opinion of major international organisations such as IEA, IPCC, the European Union, and others, who all consider CCS as a fundamental element for a solid and credible medium and long-term decarbonisation strategy. So there are clear environmental benefits from CCS, but also economic benefits as well, allowing the preservation of jobs that are currently involved with products that don't abate their CO2, but also the creation of new jobs linked to the promotion of new product chains. I think the CCS industry will attract new businesses, new industries to develop as a consequence of the enablement of that decarbonisation. And so also this new industry, this new business, this new carbon capture and storage, it's an opportunity for ENI to develop a new business line in the decarbonisation sector. You know, an entity that can contribute to cutting our own net emissions and also provide a solution for third parties with these hard to abate emissions, even beyond the energy sector, and in particular beyond the energy sector. So we feel that we've developed a distinctive approach based on, let's say, two key pillars. Firstly, being an operator and developer of transportation and storage of CO2. And this is leveraging on our own store potentials. The fact that we've got certain assets that we can reuse. We have depleted gas fields located in fact in the UK in very convenient locations that are proximal to these industrial clusters. But also the other pillar that we're interested to develop is as an orchestrator of CCUS projects. Providing integrated project management, for instance, and technical capabilities that extend beyond the provision of transportation and storage. So these are the elements of how CCS really fits within our strategy.
Okay, fascinating. There's quite a bit in there, I think, Martin. I quite liked actually but it's rare that someone frames it initially from the energy trilemma, right? It is people jump straight onto the hard to abate side of things and kind of forget you're kind of coming back to something which is secure, affordable, and environmentally beneficial or sustainable, should we call it as well. And actually CCS can be part of that solution because, as you say, it helps to secure jobs, it helps to ensure that you can have a cleaner product at the end of it, and we'll come on to this, let's say, with HyNet also, but there's also, for example, clean hydrogen that you can produce as a result of this, which is also around decarbonisation and ensuring industry stay there. So I quite like that lens. But if I just to sort of be 100% clear in my mind, you're essentially also then talking about, for yourself as a company, it's essentially scope 3, which is the main benefit to you as a company, as well as the opportunity to create a new business line, which is through that distinct approach you just described.
Yes, it's all part of the strategy, really. But not CCS is not the only part of that strategy, but it's a key pillar of reaching that ambitious but doable goal. We're very focused.
Yes. No. I mean, obviously, if people want to spend a bit of time looking at ENI's website, I'd certainly encourage you, if you look at things like hydrogen and offshore wind and all the other sectors and biofuels, ENI is a core part of all those different industries in one way or another. So, but okay, look, let's stick with CCS, and let's stick to, I think, what we wanted to have this conversation around the UK, and specifically, you started to allude to. Essentially, what my next question is around how does the UK play into all of that, right? So you start to talk about HyNet, you start to talk about storage sites that are particularly convenient in some respects to be able to use in this space. So maybe just, particularly your role and what you're focused on, how does the UK kind of play into that ambition specifically then?
We're very fortunate here in the UK. It's really been a very interesting process over the last sort of five years or so. And it's clear to us that the UK is really one of the first and most active countries to promote CCS. And this is really through the focus that they have on the UK government's focus on the net zero by 2050 ambition, the decarbonisation target. And they're taking it absolutely seriously. And that's evidenced by the financial commitment that they've made, the £20 billion to help the industry reach a commercial scale. This isn't small scale business. This is a big picture strategy that can place the country on this defined trajectory to store. I mean, initially, I think the target is 20 to 30 million tons of carbon dioxide stored annually by 2030, and creating tens of thousands of new jobs. So the commitment that the UK has in respect to CCS is quite clear and evident. So working in that environment is perfect, really, for me personally, and for the company as a whole. It's this sort of combination of the industrial cluster concept, the geographical context, the location of these clusters, and really the methodical approach that's been taken by the UK government in defining what I believe is appropriate business models for CCS. I mean, there's a lot of debate, some differences of opinions, but how do we get things started at scale? How do we go to scale in the trajectory that is really required? And so I think what the UK government has done is really important in that context, getting a vehicle, and it's really beneficial to ENI as a whole, seeing what's being achieved in the UK, seeing what can be achieved, because there's a lot of lessons learned, not just technical lessons, but commercial business lessons, regulatory lessons that can be learned, that we can help to share more widely in our global portfolio. So UK is a really important location for us in our CCS ambitions.
And I like the way you've described things there around almost setting a standard or an example that some people may or may wish to choose to replicate. I mean, the US has done things differently, and other countries have done things differently, and other companies have done things differently. But we've seen markets elsewhere open up with a recognition of certainly some elements of what the UK's done. It's going to be important. It's an element of regulation and sort of carrots and sticks, or similar, whichever phrase you want to use. And it seems like the UK has in the past got some criticism, but clearly there's a lot of benefits to its approach, which is encouraging companies like yourselves to make the plunge and invest, which is important.
We need to get started within an environment that is understandable and predictable. I think for the transportation storage business, the aspect of the risk allocation within the business models is appropriate, and it can be different for sure, but it's appropriate, predictable, and it's something that will attract not only our own company sort of equity funding, but others, and it will give confidence to lenders as well, and which
is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. What are you working on right now?
Right. I mean, we've got two specific projects. One which I think a lot of people know about, and that's the Liverpool Bay CCS development. That's what we call it internally, more widely known as part of the HyNet Northwest cluster, and that's on the west coast of the country, addressing decarbonisation in northwest UK, North Wales, northwest England, leveraging on the depleted gas fields in Liverpool Bay. And we've, as a company, we've got extensive experience in storing gas in depleted fields over many decades. This experience, combined with the use of offshore assets that we have owned for and operated as hydrocarbon assets for many years, essentially means that we're very familiar. We have a good data set. We have good confidence about the ability to contain not only hydrocarbons, but actually to contain injected CO2 following the depletion of those hydrocarbons. This is one project that we'll talk about, I think, in a little bit more detail later on. And our other project that we're spearheading is one on the other side of the country, what we term as the Bacton Thames Net Zero project, which is utilising the depleted Hewitt field as a potential storage hub. And we like to sort of refer to these storage sites as storage hubs. We're willing to collect in CO2 from wherever it's economically viable to collect it into. So these are the two main project opportunities. There are, in addition to that, as a consequence of the company's expansion, other CCS projects emerging. So we're in expansion mode effectively within the UK.
Perfect. So more investment to come in the future. But okay, for now, let's talk about maybe HyNet and Bacton as the two examples. I think that's very interesting to talk about. As you say, the kind of HyNet is if not one of the two, at least, key leading projects in the UK at the moment, certainly in terms of progress and where we expect things to go, and therefore has done many firsts and set examples of as to how things may or may not work out. Can you maybe just provide a bit more insight to people with HyNet? You've used various different names there, right? There's Liverpool Bay, there's the HyNet area, then you've got all the different parts that you specifically are involved in as the TNS, etc. The transport and storage side of things. So maybe if you just break it down a little bit for people who are less familiar with that, because they hear different things and don't quite understand who's doing what. How do you fit in? How do you operate with others, maybe, and just explain that a little bit to people before we dig into a few more details?
No, that's great, because there is always, I think, a lot of confusion in the detail. But we can start with the big picture.
Yeah,
and
please.
the big picture is the word HyNet, I guess, which that word was evolved many years ago by interested parties, even before ENI became involved. And essentially it was as the sort of name suggests, HyNet, hydrogen network. But we've our business, though, from the ENI perspective, is not specifically related to hydrogen. It's related to the development of and operation of infrastructure necessary to transport and store carbon dioxide emissions. And that's an important differentiator. Hydrogen can be and will be produced. Low carbon hydrogen will be one of our customers, because in order to produce hydrogen through a certain process, CO2 is released as a consequence of that, and the capture of that CO2 and the transportation of that CO2 through our infrastructure enables the production of that low carbon hydrogen that can then be utilized by various interested industrial users interested in fuel switching, for instance, from gas to hydrogen. But it's really not the fundamental of our project at all. The fundamental of our project is to supply infrastructure that assists any company who has captured their carbon, their emissions, to find a home for it, a permanent, safe sequestration of that carbon dioxide. And what we do is to provide that infrastructure to transport and to store that CO2 within Liverpool Bay, our depleted gas fields in Liverpool Bay. So that's our primary role. Our additional role is to be leader of, let's say, the cluster, to work with our potential customers to facilitate and orchestrate, if you like, the full chain. Now, these customers have their own responsibility at the moment in terms of the capture side of their project, but this interlinking between the capture and then the transportation and storage, fundamentally, it has to be. This is part of the overall full chain of the decarbonisation proposition. And to that effect, there's a lot of parties involved. We have got, as ENI stroke Liverpool Bay, we've got over 20 memorandum of understandings with potential entities who are interested in for us to take their CO2 for permanent storage. But in addition to that, there is an equal number of parties also in the future who also might be interested to take hydrogen that can be enabled through our transportation and storage system. So the HyNet Northwest is an industrial cluster, effectively, and we're the operator of this transportation and storage system. It's big. It's a big scale in the HyNet cluster. It'll transform, this part of the world in terms of, because it's very, this area of, say, Cheshire and North Wales and moving towards Manchester and Liverpool is one of the most energy intensive locations in the UK. So what we're doing there is really important. It'll have a really important impact on overall emissions, from industrial emissions from this area. And it'll be a first of its type in the world, really, to the first low carbon industrial cluster. So it's really exciting. Yeah. Sometimes I have to pinch myself or remember just how, it's I've been working the project for so long. This is a big deal. So a little bit more about the detail, I'm sure would be interesting.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So I've talked about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
The actual stores themselves, there are 3 sites in Liverpool Bay that, under hydrocarbon sort of wording, we call our Liverpool Bay asset. 3 fields quite close together. They're all depleted. They're all in the situation now where we are beginning to decommission oil and gas facilities associated with that past production. But there is quite a lot of infrastructure that we can actually reuse specifically for CO2 storage. There are, for instance, existing pipelines that we can repurpose. We're going to make use of the 3 of the offshore jackets. These are the platforms, and make as much efficient economic reuse as is viable, effectively. There is considerable amount of new infrastructure that we also have to add. For instance, we will be constructing a new onshore pipeline between, let's say, the heart of the emitters, which is located around and about the sort of Ince area, close to what was previously called the Stanlow refinery. A 35-kilometre pipeline from that location all the way through to our existing onshore gas pipeline, which terminates around the Connors Quay location on the border of North Wales, England. And then that will tie into our existing onshore pipeline to take us up to Point of Ayre, which is the gas treatment facility on the coastline. So all of these reuse of infrastructure has been carefully tested for its ongoing integrity for the use of CO2. And we're quite fortunate that the infrastructure is designed in a very robust way already.
But what you're doing is you're pushing something in reverse down that pipeline rather than the other way that it's been before. Simplifying things very much so, I guess.
That's right. So there's this mixture between reuse of existing infrastructure and new build. So we're designing the initial phase of the system will be designed to handle around 4.5 million tons of CO2 per year. I guess people don't really know how much that is, but the overall storage capacity of the Liverpool Bay stores is around 200 million tons.
Right.
So basically, it can easily accommodate 4.5 million tons per year for 25 years, for instance. Yeah. That adds up to something like, I can't remember, 119 million tons.
Yeah.
But we don't want to stop at 4.5 million tons per year. We have designed elements of the system, especially the new pipeline system, to accommodate 10 million tons per year. So we envisage an expansion post 2030 to move up from this 4.5 million tons per year to 10 million tons per year. And that's really been designed on the basis of what we're aware of the existing demand and also the context of the overall storage capacity of the reservoirs. 4.5 million tons is a lot. And basically, I can talk a little bit about, to put this into context, I can talk a little bit about the potential first users of the system, because the government, through, let's say, the parallel phase, not only are they going through the process of, have been through the process of awarding our company as front runner what they call track one, they're also in parallel looking at the most efficient, most ready capture projects to be introduced into our system. And this is what they were referring to as phase 2 of their deployment process. Mm-hmm. And back in, I think, March of last year, the government announced that it had selected 5 projects, 2 of which are related to cement production. So we've got Heidelberg's Padeswood cement plant. We have a tarmac pilot scheme for cement CO2 capture. We have 2 energy from waste processes, one operated by Viridor in Runcorn, and one operated by Encyclus, which is closer to the Ince area, and one new low carbon hydrogen production plant, which is operated by SR Energy Transition. These are our first five customers. And these customers, if everything goes to plan and if all of these projects reach FID, would contribute around about 3 million tons per year. So fairly quickly, this phase 1 of the capacity that we've got will be filled up. These are some of the major emitters in the region. There are other emitters who may well be interested in the next process, which is what the government calls the track 1 expansion. And they're going through a process that they announced earlier on in the year. This 4.5 million tons rate, at least, is going to be filled before 2030. That's absolutely our plan. And then we'll immediately begin to move to a higher capacity. But it's the way that we've done things is in a phased way.
Just so I understand, what is it that needs to now happen for an FID to actually take place? Because I think that's what's confusing people who think that, you got your carbon storage license for this 4 years ago or so it was. I think it's 2020, CS04, if I can't remember it correctly.
Yep, CS004.
Thank you. Good. God, at least that was in my memory there somewhere. And, you've been working very hard to get this project going. But it feels like we're about to be really getting a momentous kind of event, should we call it, happening in the industry where things do move forward. What is missing in your mind for that to happen?
We are going to get a momentous event, and it's not that things are missing. It's about just ensuring that they are all put in the right place at the right time. FIDs have to happen pretty much at the same time, because yes, there has to be certain conditions precedent. For sure, the government and ourselves, we need to ensure that all of the permitting is in place. And in that respect, we had a pretty major milestone in March last month or so, when we were granted a development consent order, which is the main sort of planning and permitting vehicle for the construction of the onshore pipeline, that new section of onshore pipeline that I mentioned. So that was a key thing a key condition precedent that had to happen. But there are others, such as you talked about you've had a storage license for the last 4 years. That's a license to appraise. It's not a storage permit. And we have applied to the NSTA for a storage permit that has got all of the detail there that NSTA needs to have in order to ensure that the project will safely contain CO2 over forever safely. That's a condition precedent, and they will take their time to review and to ensure that everything is in place. There are other financing conditions precedent that have to be progressed. Yeah, the list is quite long, even just for us, and there's a similar sort of requirements on the capture side that we're not so familiar with. But all things have to happen pretty much together. So yeah, it's exciting, momentous. The demand for this type of service, whether it's talking about our own particular project on HyNet or elsewhere in the UK, is really, really high. And so keeping this momentum going is really important.
Well, yeah, thanks for taking us through that. I wonder whether, I don't know if you want to say anything else about HyNet specifically, but whether we maybe should be moving on to just the Bacton side of things as well. I'd like to just sort of talk about that a little bit as well. You know, a less well progressed, well, maybe unfair to say that, but less mature opportunity than you've taken the HyNet opportunity forward so far. Can you maybe just talk us a little bit about what's that? Is that like HyNet Mark II, just in a different part of the UK, or is it in fact something completely different that we're talking about?
It has some similarities in that we are reusing a depleted gas field, and this is Hewitt we're talking about, and we obtained our second carbon dioxide storage appraisal license last year. And so that's enabled us to go forward on that particular project, and it is less mature than the Liverpool Bay project, and it is also different in that it is not quite on the back door of a big industrial cluster. I mean, it's Hewitt, located offshore Bacton, just 25 kilometers away, which is the closest store from the coast of East Anglia. So it's very accessible, good value for money in our view in terms of a potential carbon storage location. Norfolk is in the heart of agricultural sort of land. It doesn't have big cities and industrial hinterland close to it in the same way that you do in around the Liverpool Manchester area or Humberside or Teesside.
Yeah.
So there is
differences. Just very briefly, sorry, just for people who don't know the geography of the UK, right? You're sort of looking at kind of London in one area, and if you then go north and slightly east of that, but not too far, you get to an area which I believe is part of the world that doesn't have any motorways. I think it's the only county or the only region, that doesn't have a motorway in it. It is far more remote.
It's a beautiful place.
It is a beautiful part of the world. And so when you I think Norwich, I think, is probably the biggest town.
Yeah,
that people may have heard of.
I was there yesterday. Yes.
There you go. So perfect. Yeah. And so so it is a bit more remote, but it is also where there's a lot of infrastructure, such as the Bacton terminal, that connects the southern North Sea, other parts of the UK, back on shore.
Yeah, it's that. The fact Bacton is a gas terminal is pretty important. So it receives a lot of gas. Therefore, it is connected with potential future CO2 storage sites. And the potential of the southern North Sea is substantive for carbon storage. It's not just our Hewitt field. There are other fields. There are many licenses that have been awarded recently by the NSTA in that particular area, and so it's got great potential for longer term, large scale CO2 storage. You mentioned London. It is as proximal to London as you can get for a carbon storage location. And London is a big site of emissions. Not all of them are necessarily industrial, but in the Thames Estuary area in particular, there are a large number of big scale emitters, big power stations, energy from waste companies that are looking for decarbonisation solutions. And Bacton is in my view, ideally located and close, and can address that next phase of area of the UK for decarbonisation. Not only that, because of the scale of potential storage capacity in that area and the existing connection from Bacton to continental Europe, there is a gas interconnector pipeline running between those two locations. It makes that area very interesting, not only for UK storage of the UK emissions, but also storage of European emission.
Okay, so that's very interesting. And I was going to ask you about the future, and maybe you sort of partly answered it there, and that's helpful, because what you have got, though, specifically as a company for this is, you mentioned the series of companies have gone in and got a license in a recent licensing round. So the UK held a licensing round very recently, well, the first one, in fact, a carbon storage licensing round. So your previous licenses you would have gotten would have been what we call out of round. So you would have applied directly and you would have got it and had certain conditions attached to it. But this was then a licensing round where people essentially were, we'll call it bidding in, essentially, to have a license to start, or whatever it might be, the appraisal process to figure out whether this is an appropriate storage site or not. You mentioned the Hewitt field had a license attached to that one. That's a depleted gas field that you won. I think that's CCUS 008. I did write that one down, so I didn't have to remember that one specifically. At one stage, you're sort of saying, we don't quite know what the future is. At the same time, you've got a license where there are essentially some commitments attached to it to spend some time and effort to figure things out. So it's not just a coordinator, you're actually investing some real time and effort and potentially some money in this sort of opportunity as well. Can you maybe just talk through a little bit about what that looks like for someone like yourself? It's not just it's not a website and we're talking to each other with your partners, which I think is a really good thing, but there's actually some real commitment that you're putting forward.
I think companies like ours do have to take risk. It's always better if there's certainty, exact certainty, but what is certain to us is the trajectory. What is certain to us is the environment that we're working in. What's certain to us is what we can offer. And there are obligations. If you want to be successful, you have to do things properly, and that's the commitments that we've given within the appraisal license that you referred to. We've already shot high resolution seismic, and we did that really quickly after license award. And we have other commitments that we will adhere to. If you want to be a leader, and ENI is a leader and wants to maintain a leader in this sector, you have to commit. And we would like to be part of the solution. We would like to contribute to the solution and be active in the discussions that need to take place, and play our role from industry side to assist government and authorities in progressing things in a way that it can work for us, and that ultimately would be commercially viable for us, such that we can maintain our investments. So it's not an easy game. It's a challenging game, but something that we're really committed to.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly CCS has been tried to be sort of developed in the past, and it hasn't always worked. I never mean that not from a technical perspective. I'm talking about a policy, regulatory, commercial perspective, and this time. That's why we're talking about the FID and being an exciting moment, is because actually it is working right now as a concept, and but there's more work to do.
This point's really important, David, because it's all about confidence. Come back to sector confidence, and sector confidence is driven by success. Here we're in a different environment. We're in a net zero environment, and that's the big difference, I think. For us, the future is quite clear, and I think the same motivations are not only in the UK but in the countries of the EU where we also operate, and so everything is aligning now in a much better way.
Thank you for taking the time, Martin, to walk us through all that and sharing your thoughts. It really is it's a very interesting subject, and it's really great what you and I are doing. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit more on that with us today.
Thanks, David. It's my pleasure.
Perfect. And thanks everyone else for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to our podcast, give us a good rating, and share with your friends. Talk to you next time. Thanks.